Every day, thousands of hackers try to steal your crypto. But Arculus uses air-gapped technology by forming a protective barrier that insulates you from hackers and secures your crypto. Order yours at getarculus.com.
Hey guys, with sports betting season in full force with football here, you need a sports book with integrity and longevity like BetUS. You may already know this, but BetUS has been pioneers in the sportsbook industry for almost 3 decades, thriving and paying their loyal customer base. That is BETUS.com, and they have loads of bonuses. Join now or call 1-800-69-BET-US. That is 800-MY-BET-US. You receive 125% sign-up bonus by using bonus code SST125. That's SST125. They have re-up and referral bonuses. Also, BetUS is known among America's favorite sportsbook for lots of reasons. Bet on team and player props, loads of NFL futures, UFC matches, PGA golf, live betting on most sports. The online casino has hundreds of games. The racebooks has all the horse tracks. They have every bet type imaginable. Follow my lead and get your phone, online, and sports betting partner with integrity and longevity like I did. BetUS. You bet. You win. You get paid. BetUS.
Why does it matter? Like, I think that both of them are really good players. You know, we have a lot of confidence in both of them. And I think the outside perception is that, like, one guy's way better than the other. And I think both of them are really good. And I'm proud of both of them. I'm so glad that they've handled it the right way. JT's frustrated. He wants to play quarterback, and he doesn't get to when he has an injury. Stetson just goes out and does his job and wants to be there to help the team. So I don't think ceilings. I think growth, and that's where my focus is.
What a weekend it was, and it is now a chance for us to break it all down. It is SEC football and beyond. Hope everybody is having a great start to the week. It's Dan Matthews. It's Chris Landry here with you to get the week started, to recap week number 5. Chris, that's crazy to think. Week number 5. Summer and football season both go faster as you get older. That's not fair. It shouldn't be that way, Chris.
It is, and I got to tell you, I know it's happening, and you probably feel it in your shows and whatnot, but I just got done with Scouts Eye on college football, and there were some pissed, and I did radio this morning. They're pissed off people. They're pissed off in Florida. They've been pissed off in Baton Rouge. They're ticked off in College Station. They want coaches fired. They want their heads. We must be football season. It is, and we're getting more and more deeper into it. So a lot of fun, a lot of things to react to today, but we've got 2 great teams, and I know I invite everybody to join us as a bunch of them were in a lot of the show, and Scouts Eye was answering a lot of the questions in the chat room. So inviting everybody to join us again with your questions, follow-ups. We're going to go through all the games, and we'll tell you all the good, bad, the ugly, and what this means. But we got some big picture items to discuss, which in October, to think that Florida's pretty much out of it in the East. To some of the things this early has got people really, really frustrated, and a lot of excitement about the A&M Alabama game all summer, and no one's excited about it in College Station now, and I don't know what they're going to have primetime on CBS Saturday night. So, man, a bunch to talk about, including 2 great teams right now in the league.
Yeah, we are going to get to all of that in today's show, as Chris just mentioned there. You want to get in on the conversation, of course, here, twitch.tv/Chris Landry Football. You can hit us up in the comments section. We always love getting to those. Follow us on Twitter, too. He is at Landry Football. I am at Dan Matthews, ATL. 1T in Matthews is the way that you can find us there. And, of course, too, listening to us on the podcast. We always love when people do that, Chris. And they can find us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast needs. Download the Southern Sports Today app as well to get everything college football related that you can possibly need. It is right there for you. The Chuck Oliver Show, of course, daily, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern, and replays found there on the app. So do all of that as we get into the action that has been. And of course, Chris, usually on a Monday and Tuesday, that's when most of the SEC coaches in either of those 2 days will address the media. And we start first with bad news out of Tuscaloosa, because there hadn't been a lot of that this year. It's mostly been a lot of good news. But even though Brian Robinson was the ball carrier that got most of the action on Saturday, Jace McClellan has been a bright spot for this team, and he is going to be a bright spot no longer, because Nick Saban announcing on Monday that McClellan lost for the season to a knee injury.
Yeah, it's tough loss, and they've got good back, so I think Jace was running ahead of Trey Sanders in terms of kind of the effort and how he's been practicing. So that carrot that Nick tends to do when you have all that talent to kind of push one guy, and it'll be interesting to see, because I do think having multiple backs, now they usually tend to run one guy and run them a lot and feature it a lot, but they like to have that other guy that's kind of ready to go to play that role in somewhat of a in a backup situation where they'll come in and then that guy will take over for a little bit for a game or two. But yeah, that's a tough loss for them. And but boy, they certainly ran the football extremely well, and it's one of the things that I thought would be necessary to kind of control that game, and was a very impressive performance. But Jace McClellan, tough for that kid.
Yeah, we'll get into the numbers a little bit later on, as Alabama playing an unconventional game by their standards. Who the heck would have ever thought years ago that we would be saying that about a Nick Saban coach team? But the man himself saying it after Saturday's game. So we'll have that when we break down the Alabama-Ole Miss game a little bit later on in the show. Let's go to College Station, because when we do the show later on in the week, Chris, we're going to be talking about these two programs together, because they're going to have the primetime CBS game on Saturday in College Station. But Jimbo Fisher, gosh, that offensive line has just been banged up all season long. Fisher saying on Monday during his press conference that Aggie offensive lineman Luke Matthews, 2 T's in Matthews, but that means if he's an offensive lineman with 2 T's in his last name, that means that he's probably part of that Matthews group of offensive linemen. Jake, and of course, the old man himself, Bruce Matthews there, but had surgery on Monday and is going to miss the remainder of the season. Surgery on the shoulder, Chris. Also, 2 other Texas A&M players are going to be done for the year. Cornerback Miles Jones, done after undergoing foot surgery. And to make matters worse, this from Saturday Down South, fellow defensive back Brian George might also be out for the year.
Yeah, look, the A&M, we'll get into the breakdown and their problems, and which was for them, a devastating loss to Mississippi State in terms of that fan base, in terms of expectations and what have you. The reality is they're not very good this year. They were certainly overrated. The injuries on the offensive line, this is just one of the latest. They're not very good on the offensive line. Why? Well, because if you get paid $9 million a year, then you still got to figure out a way. I've learned that. The reality is it's not always easy, and it's often you see a drop. And I think when you use the standard of Alabama, where nothing phases them, everybody thinks it's going to be that way. Well, nobody's that way but them. This is an offensive line that's not very good. They got a bunch of injuries. The secondary and other parts of the defense starting to feel it. Their defense is on the field a whole lot. Their defense did not play well last week. I thought they, for stretches, they tackled pretty well, but I thought they did a poor job in the screen game, on the crossing routes, and losing more guys. It's a further problematic for them. It's a tough situation. So, look, Mama said there'd be days like this. There's no crying in football. You gotta get your players to step up and not to feel sorry for themselves, and that's the challenge going forward. Because right now, the expectations be damned. As I said last week jokingly, look, if you're picked number 2, then that means you got to. What's wrong? It doesn't mean a darn thing. They're just not as good. They got a young quarterback. Their offensive line's not as good, and they can't score a bunch of points. Well, you can't score a lot of points. You're going to be in every game, which means every game a team is capable of beating you. Colorado had their chance. They didn't get it done. Arkansas killed them. Mississippi State was able to figure it out. But the bottom line is this A&M team is a shell of itself, or a shell of what we thought they would be.
You mean to tell me that people that get paid $9 million a year to be a coach, that they're not going to face serious criticism when they lose more than one game at the beginning of the season? You mean to tell me that fan bases won't do that? I mean, I'm shocked, Chris. I don't think we've ever seen that.
Shocked.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever seen that in sports where, oh, look how much this guy is paid, where, it's one of those baseball, for example, they bat 220 in a season as opposed to a guy that's on the rookie contract still. Of course, the overpaid guy is always going to be the one that gets the brunt of the blame. And that's the way it is in college football too. No different. All right, let's move on because we're going to get into a little bit more of LSU because Chris, as I sent you in our pre-show rundown, I got a lot of thoughts on LSU right now and where they are. But this is just the tip of the iceberg here. Monday press conference, Ed Orgeron asked about Steve Ensminger. And the headline would read, Ed Orgeron says they are considering adding veteran offensive coordinator to the booth. Well, then, of course, being Steve Ensminger, who was the offensive coordinator, retired from on-field coaching, but still working with the program in a consultant and analyst role. So here we go, Chris. They're 5 games into the season. They're 3-2, and Coach O is already maybe looking around and saying, even though this guy coached with Joe Brady, I don't think he's quite the Joe Brady type.
Yeah, but and I'm not saying you are, but yet there are people that are surprised. I don't know how this is a surprise. Ed is going to try to react and give the impression that he's fixing it and he's got it all figured out, because that's what kind of people do when they're clueless. It is, it's coming out every day. He came out today, and what did he say? This was the headline. Well, that was one of the headlines you just mentioned. The other was, just so you know, it's Tell the Truth Monday, which is getting really old. So the Tell the Truth Monday is you still suck and you can't run the football. That's the truth. But the other part, you'll be glad to know, and all LSU fans will be glad to know, that he met with the coaches today, and they had a good meeting. And I'm like, oh, well, then that takes care of that. We got it figured out, because, it was waiting for that. It was waiting for the good meeting with the coaches to get it all figured out. Because, I was wondering what the hell was going on, and we got it now. God bless them. But to me, Dan, my feeling on this is, why do you think – I mean, there's no reason to think in the summer, in the last spring, that he was getting the coaching moves right. It was a dog and pony show. Most of the moves that he's made have not worked. He's living on the Joe Brady was a good move. And that's it. Other than that, tell me, Dave Aranda was inherited, Bo Pelini, last year was a disaster. This year's not all that. Scott Linehan was the best thing that happened to Scott Linehan was Bo Pelini, because it wasn't good, but it was more that Bo Pelini got the brunt of the issue. So the point he's like, I'm gonna get out of here while the getting's good. Yeah, it was like the vitriol went to Bo Pelini, and by the way, Scott, your ass is fired too. It was just just get it done.
Retirement or have more people coming after me.
Yeah, I know. So it was like one of those things is just that the expectation that Ed's going to figure it out. There's a pattern there, and look. We know it. They won the national championship in 19. Anybody, as I like to say, you can fund your retirement by winning the lottery. It could happen. You might win the Powerball. I would not count on it. It is not likely. The chances of being able to catch lightning in a bottle by it is very possible. He keeps trying to hire coaches. Eventually something may click. But do you trust that? I don't know why people would trust it, and I think there's a lot of frustration. So why not throw in? I mean, I can tell you that there's a stabilizing factor with Ensminger, and I think he probably would do a better job. And remember that I do think, and Joe Brady was the big part of it, but I think the fact that at times the stabilizing factor with Steve kind of helped make that. It was all Joe Burrow and the offense. I mean, it was everything coming together. But
yeah,
look, it's not coming together. This offensive line's bad. They average 1.2 yards a carry. They can't run it to save their life. And it's just, to try to fix things, it's a desperate time. There is no question what's coming up. We talked about what's on the schedule. Think about this for a second. Kentucky, Florida, Ole Miss, Alabama, Arkansas, A&M. I mean, there's not one game that you'd say they got to win there. ULM is the one game. So that gives you a 3-3 record. Look, I would not put it past them to win two of those games that I mentioned. Really. I mean, it just stuff got to – I wouldn't bet you. I'm not comfortable saying it. But even if they did, that's a 5-win season. You win 3 of those, that's 6 wins. If you win 3 of those, that's one hell of a finish, in my opinion. And yet, so it 6-6 and how that looks. And, I think there's a lot of things going on. So this is a desperation move of desperation. I mean, it's everything. If you asked Ed, here's what we think. What are those little things, the Ouija boards? We thinking Ouija boards would be good. Hey, we're looking into that. The Tell the Truth Ouija board Tuesday. We just God bless him. He is. It's just he's become every time he's. It's all on me. It's getting old. Add them on the list of people that are ticked off with their coaches. But I think that they've been there for a while, and he's the one that's feeling the most heat right now. Although I got to tell you, the Florida folks are apoplectic today. But no, I think there's a resolve in Baton Rouge. Like, this ain't working. It's not going to work. How is this going to end? Because it's ending. I don't know how it's going to end. And if there's enough of a finish, Dan, to where they could sell, hey, look, these coaches are getting it. And then, they would love to have enough of a run to ease the buyout. But I think I can tell you, I know Scott really well. I mean, he knows what's going on. He's just got to figure it out. I mean, he's got to play out.
Well, there's a pattern here. I mean, there's a pattern of not being able to hire or even retain top coaches. That's a problem. The other part of it as well, Chris, is, it's the old saying, and we heard it in the movie Son of a Woman, when the bow breaks, the cradle will fall. The bow for him is going to be if he starts getting decommitments. Because if that starts happening, and there is at least the kind of chum in the water for the Sharks out there that, hey, you don't want to go there, he's going to be gone. He's not even going to be there. That's going to start flying out there. And if that starts to have an adverse effect in terms of recruiting, then that's going to be the fatal straw for Ed Ogeron. I don't think there's any doubt about that. The other part of it as well is, to be fair, he did do it's 100% on me again in his press conference on Monday. Let me tell you what frustrated fan bases don't ever want to hear. They don't want to hear 2 things. They don't want to hear excuses, and they don't want to hear calls for positivity. They want to hear reality, and they want to hear people who have a realistic approach to what is happening. And I saw it happen here in Atlanta on the pro side with Dan Quinn as a head coach. People got tired of the positivity. Hell, Chris, they got tired of him putting on an Atlanta Braves hat last year where they said, we hate you, and you're doing this, and you're even going to give us a reason to necessarily even hate you even more if they lose in the playoffs? So nobody wants to hear Tell the Truth Mondays, Throwback Thursdays, Way Back Wednesdays, Competition Tuesdays. Nobody wants to hear any of that. You know why they want to hear it from Pete Carroll? Because Pete Carroll gets his guys into the playoffs every other year, if not every year. And when you're losing, nobody wants to hear about the T-shirts, the slogans, the one team, one heartbeat, any of those different types of things. Nobody wants to hear any of those things. So go ahead, Chris.
No, you're on a roll. Please, I don't want to stop. Now, I wasn't. I mean, I have thoughts, but I agree. You're on a roll. Continue, please.
No, I was going to say that's a segue into our games because that's where I want to start today because I've got more notes on this, and that is LSU
Good.
losing a game that they should have won to Auburn, 24-19. And Ed's right. This is completely on him. There is no doubt about that because I'm not going to put this on Jake Peetz or the other offensive coach that they hired, whose name is not in front of me right now. But the point is this isn't on Jake Peetz, who has his name on it for the most part right now. Because you hired a guy who had never called offensive plays, and it showed. And there's two parts to that, Chris, is where I want to start. Number one, this is not a job for on-the-job training. LSU should be a job for offensive play callers out there that when a 225 number comes across your phone and you maybe don't have Ed Ogeron or the football administration's number saved on your phone, and that comes across, and you see if you got an iPhone that says Baton Rouge, Louisiana, I'm picking up that phone immediately. Absolutely. You want me to coach that talent? You want me to coach these receivers, those running backs, that quarterback? Absolutely. I will be there in a second. He couldn't get anybody to do that, Chris. And this just reeks of desperation where you got to say, hey, he was in the same room as Joe Brady. He watched film with Joe Brady. He did all those different types of things. Does that mean that he's going to be the man for the job? And I want to actually go through the numbers here really quick, Chris, if you'll indulge me. At one point in this game, didn't LSU lead it by 13 points? So if you lead this game by 13 points, and I'm not a math major here, but let's just go through the pass-to-run breakdowns here. LSU in this game had 46 passes. Now, granted, into the game after you fell behind, you had to throw. You couldn't run. But still leading up to that point. Tell me how it's excusable to have only 26 runs. But, Dan, we can't run the football. You haven't tried. You hadn't even tried. Running the football is hard. Eric Winston, former NFL offensive lineman, had a good line a few years ago that said, running the football in this league is like trying to break concrete. You ain't going to do it the first time. You might not even do it the second time, but damn it, keep swinging the hammer at that concrete, and eventually it's going to break. Now, that's the way that LSU used to be, and I understand that they're a little bit more advanced in the passing game, but it doesn't mean it has to be a crutch. And you led for most of the game. That number should be almost flipped in terms of what you're doing offensively when you lead for most of the game, because here's the other part of it as well. The ghost of Buddy Ryan, I hope, haunted Jake Peetz on Saturday night when he went to bed. Because as a defensive coordinator, I'm not going to put this on Durante Jones. Through the first 5 games, Chris, I actually think he's done a pretty good job inheriting what he did in terms of the miscues and the miscommunication and just the awful, awful defense that we saw last season. I think through the first 5 games of the season, he's actually done a pretty admirable job. But you tell me how it's on him to be hung out to dry for 77 plays this last weekend. And people could say, oh, you didn't get the Bo Nix on 3rd down. There were other plays that led you up to that point where, honestly, the fact that they finally gave up the lead at the end, Chris, I thought was incredibly admirable because that defense was gassed. And this is a defense who the week before in Starkville, Mississippi, was on the field for 88 plays. That's inexcusable. And that's offensive play calling. That's not defense. That's offensive play calling. That's allowing that to happen. And the other part of it as well is I follow LSU Twitter and people out there, well, but Max Johnson did this. I get it. He's made mistakes. But you have put that kid on a high wire without a trapeze net below him for the last 5 weeks. And the fact that he's 3-2 right now, I think, is a tribute to him much more than it is to your play calling and to your coaching. Because you have put the offense completely on him. It's not been on anybody else. So, I've learned from some of the best people in this business in terms of what it means to be a good broadcaster, what it means to even try to be a good broadcaster. Does it necessarily mean that I am the guy that could be that myself? No. But I've also had other stops along my career where I did some things. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. But the point is I had other stops in my career, Chris, that have taught me how to do that. I'm sorry, but Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Tuscaloosa, Alabama, Athens, Georgia, Clemson, South Carolina, any of these places where they are top tier jobs in college football right now, they are not for on the job training. And that's a failing of the leadership to even allow it to even get to that point. Because I'm telling you right now, like you said, if it wasn't Ed, if it was somebody else, I think if nothing else, it's even on the leadership above him to say, yeah, we're not hiring that guy. Well, why not? He's got all this. Because he has not called an honest play in his career, and this isn't the place for it. Chris.
Well, and the big reason why it's you got people, and certainly in discussions with folks there when they were looking for hires this offseason, they were limited. You alluded to the fact because Ed is not Ed's liked but not really respected in football. And this situation has not looked like a very intriguing one because the end result is, people say, well, yeah, you go hire a coordinator, give him a 3-year contract. Yeah, people still don't want to be tied to a 3-year even they get a 3-year deal, they don't want to get tied to something where they're going to get fired in a year or two. And Absolutely. So it's taking, LSU and the talent and the history has been very attractive. But Ed Orgeron being the head coach is not real attractive for Marcus Freeman or anybody. It's not, and that's what I think Scott Woodard's beginning to understand. I think he probably what he's known, but look, he's also inherited this, and I hate to put it this way, what makes it a little bit challenging, and I think it's even the ones that were on this bandwagon, but they won the national title 2 years ago. And that's what the national media is already saying. People who, don't know what's going on, people that are lazy, but they won the title. It's the same thing about Les Miles. Well, he won one too, and it just lingered and lingered and lingered. And I can tell you that we were okay by the end. We weren't real close, Joe Oliva and I. But Joe Oliva wanted to get rid. He hated Les Miles, and I don't mean personally. He thought he was an awful. I mean, we talked about it. I talked with him. He wanted to get rid of him a few times, but there's a lot of people that now I'm curious to see. Now Scott has the political savvy to figure this out because that's going to be a lot of money owed to him, and I think he has a way to show that it's going to cost them more money if they don't do something. But there are going to be people on that board, and I'm not talking athletic administration. I'm talking above that are going to try to fight let's not spend that money to have to buy him out now type thing. So, look, this is a problem. It's a big problem. It is just, never going to work for Ed because, first of all, saying that it's on me. Well, who the hell else is it? I mean, it's like it's like people are tired of hearing that because you don't need to tell us. We know the problem is we know what the problem is. It's like you're not going to get any bonus points for saying it's on me. Now, by the way, that's what's pissing off the Florida fans right now because Dan Mullen and even a guy like Mike Leach, it's never their fault. So at least, at least they know that. But now they're tired of saying, enough, Ed. We don't need to hear that you're going to fix it. But the bad thing is when you got to have press conference, you can't do anything in a press conference but talk. And there's nothing they can say that people care to hear. And quite frankly, I think he's in a no-win situation. I don't blame him for what he says because I don't care what any coach says. I blame him for what he's done and what he's incapable of doing. And to your point, I blame Joe Oliva for being lazy, and this will probably give you an indication of where I'm going with this and where our relationship's soured. Joe Oliva twice tried to get Jimbo Fisher, and he couldn't finish the deal, and he ended up, and of course he wanted Tom Herman, and that fish got off the hook because basically it was being used, and he settled because he was afraid of the PR backlash. Let me go get a guy. And look, he'd sit there and tell you, yeah, they got us a national championship. That move went,
Yeah.
okay, But the reality is, this is where you got to take a step back and get the right leader that can make some of the decisions that you mentioned that have been so flawed. Yes, let's give Ed credit. He deserves credit for 2019. He did get Joe Burrow there. Yes, it was Steve Ensminger that identified Joe Brady, but Ed still hired him. Those things still happen under Ed. But you got to understand, did he make them happen? Is he capable of replicating that? Well, the answer is obvious. It's not. And so that's the issue. Anything in football, it's about anything in life, it's about consistency. Can you do it consistently? And I think that we've seen now it has been far from consistent. It's the opposite of consistent, and that's what you're going to get with Ed. If they stayed with him 10 more years, I wouldn't doubt that one of those years he might not catch lightning in a bottle again and something good might happen.
Sure.
Would it mean they'd win the national title again? Probably not, but they'd be really good. But you would get a lot of bad, and it's like, people say, yeah, but I bet Georgia would trade that for the title that LSU has. No, you want consistency. Consistency in being good and having one bad year. That will happen. It's like people that are criticizing Jimbo Fisher. Well, it's year 4. It should be. This is not the year. Who's to say year 4 should be better? Shouldn't be year 4 is going to be better if the team is not really good and you don't have a good play and you got a ton of injuries. It may not be your year. Now, if it's a bad year again next year and the next year, then you got something. You got to understand what's going on instead of, like most people do, say, I don't like this guy's making a lot of money, and so I'm gonna take a shot at him because look at what the job he does and grade him on that. I think people have to have a better understanding and have to be a little bit more objective with it. With Ed, look, he's just not been real consistent, and I don't think there's any confidence level, even by the folks that like him, that think it can be done. So I'm very curious to see how this plays out.
Well, and just to wrap this up, too, I mean, just a couple of things off what you just said right there. I think that's the last one right there, that for the longest time, let's just take Mark Richt, for example. What kept Mark Richt at Georgia was he doesn't embarrass us. He wins. He's had some bad luck, but it's not worth making a change. And then I think finally in the 2013 season, injuries happened, but still it was, you've got the record-setting quarterback back. You've got a good enough team. You should be in a better position than to fall flat and have Missouri win the East. Same deal the following season, 2014. Todd Gurley, get all of that. That's fine. 2015, it was pretty much, there's no excuses at this point. You have been given enough years from 2001 to this point to be able to get us over the hump, and you just haven't done it. And he acknowledged as much when he got fired. I think the thing is, too, is I don't remember exactly who it was on Instagram. Funny talking about Instagram today, but regardless, that they had pointed out, look, happy for 2019, but it's time to move on. And I think that's most of the LSU fan base right now, Chris, is because you have what happens out at UCLA. Okay, fine. A lot of factors go into it. You played against a team that caught lightning in a bottle that night. They crushed you. That happens. That's fine. Put it behind you. But it's the events leading up to it, too. It's the 5-5 the year before, the sissy blue shirt, walking around with his girlfriend the day before, all that different types of stuff that I think a lot of people look at and say, winning college coaches don't do this. And if they do, it's something that happens every once in a while, but it's not who they are. And I think there is a faction of the fan base in Baton Rouge and throughout LSU fans that's just kind of tired of dealing with it. I mean, it's kind of tired now of the ripping the shirts off, the chugging the Red Bull, all that different types of stuff that I think they kind of would sign up right now for the boring at the podium and with not being as accommodating to, pardon my take, on Barstool Sports or anybody else, if it meant that they were going to have a consistent winner. I think that there are enough people who say that. Now, look, am I saying that all those things are contributing to this program being where it's at with them? No. I think that you can win and that you can have some flair. I just think that some people know when to turn it on and when to turn it off. And I think that in some cases right here, that 2019, some would think that that would buy you some extra time, but it doesn't buy you much time when the wheels completely fall off like it looks like they have. And I think that now it's, if I would say anything to the leadership at LSU, which Joe Oliva's not there anymore, most of the people who were there and made an emotional decision to keep Les Miles, because, Chris, it was an emotional decision. The crowd chanting Les, doing all that, players carrying him off the field. I think they realized we could have a potential riot here if we move on from this guy.
Well,
look,
yeah.
But yeah, before you just real quick to wrap this one up, is sometimes you got to make the unpopular decision. I was on the sideline the following year when Georgia got absolutely kicked in the teeth by Ole Miss in Oxford, and I heard a fan to Greg McGarity yell, "F you, Greg." And I'm not saying that you want that to happen, but I think that it's also, too, it's a, hey, look, I made a tough decision that a lot of people didn't want to have made. But I knew that it's being made in the betterment of this program. And I think that you will still have people out there, oh, I'll never root for LSU again now that they've gotten rid of Ed Ogeron. Okay, you can't worry about those people. You got to worry about the people who say, we got to do this because it's better for the program and it's better for the university.
Yeah, and I don't think that's going to be an issue for LSU fans. And I don't think it was an issue for Les. Look, I'm going to tell you, because I was right in the middle of it. LSU thought, the week of that A&M game, they thought they had Jimbo Fisher. Tuesday of that week, Tuesday of Thanksgiving week, they said, we got him. And I told Virgil Osbury, I told Joe, I said, are you, that's not my sense I get from Jimmy Sexton and Jimbo. I think he's using you. Be careful. They didn't have a plan B, Dan. So when they went into that game, the discussion that you hear talked about in the press box, the discussion was, oh, let's keep Les. It was, we got to start the search over because the guy we thought that was going to take the job had turned him down. Remember, it was right that Thanksgiving Day and the Friday. Jimbo basically told the president he was staying. So they were left empty-handed. And so it was, he didn't want to get caught in a search where they were starting over. He wasn't prepared. That's what I'm talking about where Joe failed. So, yeah, I think if it wasn't about keeping Les, if Jimbo would have agreed to come, all the keep Les, it wouldn't have meant they would have fired him. And that would have lasted about 5 minutes. Because, but they didn't have anybody. And that was the problem. They didn't have a plan B. And that's one of the issues about coaching searches is, look, to me, I always tell, and I do a lot of stuff. I haven't gotten into this, but a lot of my audience and other shows know that I do a lot of coaching search consulting stuff. Not having your guy ready or not. It may not be one guy, but you've got maybe a cluster of guys that you know that would take the job that you'd be happy with. To not have that before you fire a guy is akin to jumping off a building without looking. You just can't jump without looking because then what you do is you end up making a bad decision. It's just, so now you fire a guy that was bad, then you make a bad hire, and guess what? The next 5 years, you don't even have the one title that the guy did before. It does not mean Tennessee should have kept Philip Fulmer. No, it just means that, when Lane Kiffin left, it was a bad time. They didn't do a good job. Because a new hire doesn't work doesn't mean keeping the same other guy that did a crappy job was the right move. It just needs you better be prepared to make the right move. And a lot of guys are not. Failure to prepare is preparing to fail, Dan.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll have to see how this
Hey,
all plays out for the
we
next few
talked
weeks.
about doing it. We talked about doing an LSU podcast. We just did one today, my friend.
There we go. There we go. We have met both needs here on this very show of SEC football and beyond. By the way, too, DJ Mangus was the other offensive
Yes.
hire they made this offseason.
Went
but
to
look,
Baylor
again,
yeah.
right.
Yeah,
And again, look, I just to double down on what I said, I'm not putting it at them. I'm saying that, this is a job for DJ Mangus, passing game coordinator. That's the same job that Joe Brady had. Okay, fine. You had Joe Brady, who brought in a lot of the concepts. You had Steve Ensminger, who was still calling the plays and was still leading the offense. And you had somebody who was able to learn in an assistant capacity at the time, to where I think that probably if they did pass off the reins the following season, if Brady stays, then okay, it's his offense and he's able to run it. But it's just, again, I cannot say it enough. It's not for on-the-job training. All right, let's not make SEC football and beyond, LSU football and beyond for this week, because Lord knows both me and you could do that maybe at a later date. Who knows? But Mississippi State and Texas A&M, you want to talk about kind of the opposite here, where, Chris, it was an absolute, probably a must-win this early on in the career for Mike Leach, where you had just lost a disappointing game to LSU the week before. You lost an even more disappointing game to Memphis, who then goes out and loses to Temple and UTSA in the weeks after that. So that doesn't look good on you. And now you're going in to play against a Texas A&M team who, even with their injuries, is still considered to be a better football team than you. And you go on the road and you win 26-22. Feather in the cap for Mike Leach, because I think had he not gotten that, there had been a lot of people in Starkville saying, ooh, I don't think this is going to work.
Well, and to me, I don't think anything's changed other than they won that game. I mean, you just alluded to it. We just spent a lot of time talking about the problems at LSU, a school that beat Mississippi State last week. So one thing I've learned is that fans are so emotional, and they're fire this guy, or this guy's great, give him an extension. It just goes one week to the next. Because what I saw in that game was, look, I mean, I hear a lot, the air raid hit right. They played well. I throw a lot of that on A&M. The strength of this team, the side of the ball that has to carry this team this year is the defense, and they did not defend the screen well. They were out-leveraged all game. Look, that's a bad job for a guy that I give a lot of credit to. I think that Mike Elko's done a really good job. They didn't play well. And I know they got a bunch of injuries. They've got a lot of issues. But, look, I give Mike and I give Mississippi State credit. But, again, I think, again, I look at it, I guess this is my training from coaching and scouting, is one game and one season, that's not a pattern. It's about consistency. So what I see is, and I can't remember who it was in our chat room. Maybe it was Blake or maybe it was Jeff Parrott that talked about, well, this is the type of game that Mike will win because it's an upset. Yep, that's exact. And he does that all the time. But you'll see him get out coached and make mistakes too, as he was to that LSU team that we just talked about that's got all those problems. That's 1 week ago. Nothing's really changed. 1 week doesn't change the dynamic. Mississippi State runs the table, then we can talk. Do we think that's going to happen? I don't think it will. I said last hour, I don't know what the hell's going to happen in the SEC West at the bottom, because I said 2 weeks ago that we're going to learn about who's the worst team in the West and how it's 5th, 6th, and 7th is going to shake out, because we had LSU, Mississippi State, LSU, Auburn. LSU beats State. State beats A&M. Auburn beats LSU. So we don't know any more than we did a few weeks ago. I don't think there's an awful team there, but I don't think there's a good team there. And that includes Mississippi State. It includes A&M. I see good parts of a number of these teams. I see a lot of negative parts of these teams. So my take on it is, this is just, I guess for me, for A&M, there were people that thought, oh, it's the fourth year, and they almost made the playoffs last year. I thought A&M was a 3-loss team probably this year. It looks like they're more of a 4-loss team. So I'm not as surprised by the problems they have as other people are and their fan base is. I'm a little surprised because I didn't see it in the summer, Arkansas being that good, but I could see Arkansas beating them. This game, I'm going to tell you, the rest of this year, when you can't score points, Dan, anybody that they play can beat them. LSU can beat them. Anybody that they play can beat them. Why? Because if you can't score points, everybody's in the game. Look, Missouri's a disaster. Do you think Missouri could beat them? Yeah, you score some points. I don't know that. That defense is awful at Missouri, but I guess my point is I don't think they'll lose to Missouri and South Carolina, but Auburn, Ole Miss, LSU, they're all in play. And Saturday night, that game's going to be whatever Alabama wants it to be. So I don't think they are where people think they are. I still think, why do I still think that A&M is on the right track? Because I see the infrastructure of what they're building. It does not mean that every year that you build up and the record gets better. Your record is the result, and the result is a byproduct of a number of things. I don't look at that. I look at the process. The process looks real good. The process doesn't look good in Baton Rouge. It didn't look good last year. Quite frankly, there were things that didn't look good in the championship year that were covered up. It's a trained eye looking at it. I see some things that are real positive. Now, you still got to do it, but I don't think this is the type of year for A&M. And, you can't just say because it's the fourth year, it has to be. BS. Just because the fourth year, fifth year, you're going to have those areas. I mean, and again, other than it's the same thing. Didn't we hear that about Alabama? When Alabama doesn't win the national championship, this is how good they are. When every other year when they don't win the national championship, well, it's Nick is losing it. He's old. It's this, he's that. But everybody else this is what you get. This is what you get. It's A&M is not national championship level. Okay, they're not. I think some of the people think they are. They're not there. They're not where Georgia is, for example. But even Georgia hasn't won it all. But to me, I just think that they're missing some key pieces that recruiting and time will take care of. And look, there's no excuses. They're not good enough. And I don't think they're coaching well enough. I don't think they're working around their problems as good as they need to, because I think the Mississippi State game could have been won. They could play Arkansas, Dan, 7 times. They get their ass beat 5 out of 7. That Arkansas team matches up against this A&M team because why? Arkansas has the right type of matchup advantage against this A&M team. Not the program. I think A&M's program is ultimately better, but the team this year is just not as good.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that, like you said, it doesn't get any easier for them this week against Alabama, and there's other road mines on the map still for A&M this season. So 2021 going to be one that Jimbo Fisher and everybody in Aggie Land wants to be able to move on from.
Hear that? That's the sound of someone trying to steal your crypto. Every day, thousands of hackers online are doing the same. That's why Arculus uses air-gapped cold storage technology to protect your assets. Using our keycard and wallet app to form a protective barrier, Arculus insulates you from hackers and puts control of your digital assets back in your hands. Order the first truly air-gapped crypto wallet at getarculus.com.
Chris, before we get into the other games, just a couple of ones really quick. I think we can bunch these two together because I'm not sure how many people necessarily saw them. First, it was South Carolina over Troy, 23-14, and then Vanderbilt over UConn, 30-28. Clark Lee saying after that one, we're okay with some ugly wins.
It was actually a pretty competitive game and a real interesting game, and I thought they were going to lose it. They came back to win it. Man, Connecticut's bad. And I thought, what an awful loss this is, even for Vanderbilt. Not much. South Carolina, still not very good. Man, I don't want to be too hard, but my goodness, does anybody just celebrate a win more than Shane Beamer? I mean, every win, it's like a national championship. God forbid he ever builds a good team there. God bless him. I admire the enthusiasm, but you can tell he's a young coach that's just way, way up there, and not really impressed with them. But listen, I appreciate the enthusiasm. That's the best I can give. Neither one of those teams look very good in their wins.
Let's move on to one. Well, I mean, I know that every single coach will always tell you, well, an ugly win is a lot better than a great loss. So.
Yeah, it's easy to get by. Easy to make some improvements when you're winning, but you're right.
Absolutely. All right, Tennessee over Missouri, 62-24. Chris Hendon Hooker, I think this is the quarterback that Josh Heupel needs right now.
No doubt about it. He's playing well. He's a dual threat guy. Look, this Missouri defense is awful. Okay, they are really bad. This Tennessee offense causes you some problems. And I know that getting 683 yards is a byproduct of both of those things. But I'm really impressed. I'm really impressed with what Tennessee's doing offensively. They're not good enough defensively, but the way they're milking this up, I mean, it's just really impressive. And look, situationally on defense, playing pretty good. So I'm excited at least that, as you mentioned, right quarterback that is controlling the game better, making better decisions, not an elite passer, but doesn't overthrow everything, which are drive killers, which, allows for, look, I mean, you wonder if they could have had Hendon Hooker in the game a little bit early and figured this out, that maybe the Pitt game's different. Who knows? There was maybe some better outcomes there, but really impressed by Tennessee. And I look at Missouri, and that's a program that a lot of people were excited on. I was cautiously optimistic, but I'm just seeing a lot of fool's goals there. First of all, I know, going ahead and firing Jethro Franklin, defensive line coach, and they're not talented. They're not good on defense. Yeah, they didn't recruit very well down the stretch in the last couple of years at Missouri on defense. I think Eli's a little bit of a guy that tries to talk his way into things. I don't think there's a lot of substance there personally. I just don't like this Missouri team, and I just don't like some of the way he handles things. And I don't care, make a comment here or there, that's fine. But I think there's maybe a lack of look. I will get on and we'll talk about it, to Lane Kiffin's maturity level that has improved, but still not good. I think some of the things without, is there, not to the same degree, not quite the same. Some of that thing is the same with little Eli there. I think he's in over his head, and I think we're going to see Missouri have some issues going forward. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm not real comfortable with what I'm seeing there.
Well, I mean, as a big part of that, the win that they had early on last season to get his tenure started at Missouri, to kind of maybe have a fool's gold kind of effect to it. The win over LSU.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, LSU was a disaster, and the offense is pretty good. And I do think you can see some good offenses out of this Missouri team. But look, even their offense, where was it this week? I mean, they really couldn't get it done. And I thought situationally Tennessee got them off the field and in some key third down situations. I mean, it's pretty clear with less talent, Josh Heupel in Tennessee is doing a lot more than offensively now. Now, again, I just finished giving out my sermon and lecture on let's be patient, let's see it play out.
Mm-hmm.
But, let's see Josh Heupel in Tennessee do it more consistently and get that. But I'm seeing a pattern there with Missouri that's kind of going negative, and only good recruiting is going to solve it. But I don't think he's fixed anything with his defensive moves this offseason, that's for sure.
All right, let's go to Lexington, Kentucky. A great win for the Wildcats this weekend, Chris. 20-13 over number 10, Florida. Now, I know that Anthony Richardson was a topic of conversation for Dan Mullen. And in the game on Saturday, 1 pass, 5 rushes. Emory Jones, not completely to blame for this one. I mean, still played pretty well. 23, or maybe not well, but still played good. 23 out of 31 completions, 203 yards, touchdown, and an interception. I think more what I'm trying to say with Emory Jones is it's not completely on him.
No. Look, I mean, this is my concern about Dan, and we've just touched on it earlier. So I want to go big picture in this game because the minutia is pretty simple. They weren't ready to play on offense. Now, this Kentucky defense is good. They're playing well. But, this is not the same Kentucky offense, the same Florida offense that attacked Alabama so well. There were missing things. There were plays out there to be made. There were some play calls. For a guy that I've given a lot of credit, and I think deservedly, for Dan Mullen being really good at working and developing quarterbacks and really good calling plays. There's some games where that's just not there, and this is one of them. I just think, he had I don't know if it's preparation. I don't know if it's arrogance. I don't know. But again, this is where I talk patterns. This is why I'm more concerned about some places than others is what I see with the pattern with Dan is he has these. I mean, we saw that against Missouri a couple of years ago. We saw it against LSU, and down the stretch, this team was poorly prepared, poorly coached. I saw this team, Saturday, and then the responses are, it was a hostile environment. And, that's underrated at Kroger Field, but it ain't. Give me a break. It's like this wasn't a very well prepared
fan base.
Yeah, it is, but it's still it was about your lack of preparation that was the biggest issue. And I got to tell you something. I want to give Kentucky all the credit in the world. Kentucky's not good offensively. Kentucky is really struggling. They can't get anything done on third downs. They're making way too many mistakes, and that just adds to how the hell do you lose this if you're Florida? Now, I'm happy for Kentucky, but I'm looking at Kentucky, and I'm looking at them on film, and I'm thinking, good God, they are going to get destroyed by Georgia. They're going to get embarrassed by Georgia if they continue to play offensively like they are. They're not even good offensively. I mean, they're not even top 25, top 30 in the country good. I mean, they really have lost their way on offense after an early stretch where I thought this could be a really good offensive team. They've done nothing the past 3 other than turn the football over itself. I love their defense, but I'm going to tell you, there is such a huge gap from Georgia and the rest. It's not even close. And Florida certainly, I think, has more to offer, and that was just a bad game plan and bad preparation. I think Kentucky's problems on offense, they're just not very good. That's been more consistent with them. So, look, I mean, to me it is what it is, to use that awful phrase, but it is. I mean, it's just, it's Georgia and a bunch of other people, and I do think that Kentucky and Florida are better than the rest. But you know what? One thing that's a little bit surprising is that I never thought I'd say, you know what? Tennessee's got better chances than you might think. There's not a whole lot that separates. Just disappointed more in Florida because I think they're underachieving more than Kentucky. I think they've got some real issues on offense that they've got to get fixed. But I think this Kentucky team's playing good on defense, and they're winning. So that covers it all. But I'm telling you, again, when you study it, this Kentucky team's not all that impressive.
Let's go to Athens, where number 2 Georgia took it to Arkansas 37-0. Chris, Georgia showed they wanted to be physical in this game and run the football. They did that for sure. Kind of like we were talking about earlier, the play disparity for LSU. Well, it was the play disparity the opposite direction for Georgia. They ran the ball 56 times over only 11 passes, which leads me to my next part here, Chris, where Kirby Smart asked about the quarterbacks after the game, kind of getting frustrated with the media about it a little bit, saying he has belief in all of the quarterbacks. 11 passes. Is that necessarily showing that? Because Stetson Bennett played and JT Daniels was out with the lat issue, but 11 passes. I'm not really believing you when you say that you believe in the quarterback in terms of being able to cut it loose and throw the football.
Well, I think his history would suggest maybe more than this game that is a fair criticism or a fair question that you're bringing. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think it's a fair question. Now, I will say, as much credit as I give him, Barry Odom's, look, they don't have the depth up front to match up and play. They played a lot of three-man fronts. They drop it. I'm a little bit surprised that they didn't play their linebackers a little closer and really attack more the line of scrimmage with their linebackers. Because I mean, it's pretty clear this is what Georgia wants to do. They want to run it. You're going to play that look. You're going to run that every day. So I could see the low pass outlet. I mean, I'm not going to throw the football if I'm Georgia in that game. I'm not going to throw it a bunch against drop 8. I mean, I'm going to run the football. I'm going to dominate there, and they don't have enough numbers in the box. I will run against a soft box every day, and I'm going to throw against a loaded box. They, for whatever reason, Arkansas played it defensively a way that I didn't think they played. So I thought there'd be more passes, but because I thought they would play a little more loaded fronts, and they didn't. Now, let's go big picture, because this is maybe where you're going, maybe it's not. Or maybe I'm missing what you're saying altogether, but I will say this. This is what separates Georgia from Alabama, because I'll get to that because people have asked that. I still worry about Georgia's quarterback situation, because what this tells me is JT Daniels is not healthy, and they're putting him on a pitch count, a play count because of that. Is he going to be healthy at some point during the year? Is he going to be rusty? Is he going to be healthy in the SEC championship game? Is he going to be healthy in the playoff? I don't know. I can tell you this. I'm very comfortable in saying I prefer Alabama over Georgia in a matchup if Stetson Bennett's the quarterback. Because I think Stetson Bennett could run this offense, and there's nobody going to threaten Georgia at all this year. In the SEC championship game and the national championship game, which I, at this point, would be surprised. Knock me over with a feather if Georgia and Alabama doesn't play twice this year in those two games. But with Stetson Bennett, I'm not saying they can't win it. I just say it's very unlikely. I just don't see it. And it's obvious they're not confident in the younger guys. And I think they feel like they got a Maserati, and they don't want the 18-year-old taking it out for a Friday night drive or a Saturday drive and get it wrecked, because they know they got a great team. But I think this whole season, the whole championship run probably relies on JT Daniels' health, because I think they can and will throw it when they absolutely have to, Dan. I don't think they have to now. And so you can say, well, they're not really developing and throwing it. This past week, I'm not throwing against an 8-man drop. Pardon me.
Bless you. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm done. I was just trying to cover.
You're good.
It was coming for a while, and I couldn't get it out before the sneeze came. Sorry.
Tis the season. Tis the season. The season's changed. So does our sinuses. Trust me, I know the struggle all too well. But 7 tackles for a loss for the defense in this game. 4 sacks. The defense continuing to show they can put pressure, and also to a block punt in special teams. I know that's something that Kirby definitely love to see as well. So a good day all the way around. 37-0, 23 total points scored this year against Georgia.
That's unbelievable.
That's impressive.
Unbelievable.
Really
I mean, this day and age, if you're holding people to 23 points a game, that's impressive.
Absolutely.
To 23 points total. Look, I don't tell me they haven't played anybody. I granted, they're not going to play many people on their schedule that's challenging. 23 points. That's pretty impressive against anybody.
That is. That absolutely is. Speaking of 20-plus points, that's what Ole Miss scored, but it was not enough because Alabama doubled them up, 42-21 in this one. I got to start here, Chris, and I put this out on Twitter over the weekend. We did Nick Saban's dirty work for him of and not even rat poison, the motivation for his team. Oh, look at Alabama. They're so flawed. There's so many issues on that team. They're not the elite team that they had been last year or in other years past. And Nick Saban said, oh, really? Okay, well, I've got Ole Miss here on 3:30 CBS on Saturday. I can prove that that's not the case. Bama, like we talked about with Georgia, wanting to prove they can be physical, wanting to prove that they could take over the line of scrimmage, and they did that. 50 rushes, 210 yards. Now, here's the difference here. 26 Bryce Young passes for 241 yards, 2 touchdowns. Defense still looking good as well, 7 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. Here's where the game was lost, and Lane Kiffin even talked about it a little bit afterwards, Chris. 3rd downs, 5 of 14 for the Ole Miss Rebels. 4th downs, had a couple of controversial ones in this game. 2 of 5. What that really tells me, Alabama's defense able to get off the field, and it spelled doom for that Ole Miss defense. We wanted to know if Ole Miss's defense was going to be improved. I think they are improved, but they weren't improved enough to be able to take it to Alabama. And remember what I said, too, on this show and on the Chuck Oliver show. Who was looking forward to this game the most all year long? Pete Golding. He pitched a hell of a game on Saturday, Chris.
Yeah, he does. He gets all the criticism for the Alabama fans, and I think a lot of fans who love their team but maybe don't understand that, A, this is Nick Saban's defense, and B, you're not going to have the same type of defensive output game in and game out as you did when Kirby Smart was there. Because when Kirby Smart and Jeremy Pruitt was at Alabama, they weren't running this type of an offense. And I know you're probably going to get to that at some point. You're going to mention that this is not even what Alabama wants to do offensive. They want to throw it. So that's your defense is going to give up more points. So that's that. And I'm not saying that Pete Golding is the best, but he does what Nick Saban wants. And he wants young guys that are going to run his defense. Okay. Whereas on offense, he gives a little bit more leeway. He gives the overall structure and lets you go and do it. That's not what he does on the defense side. He doesn't want somebody coming in with their newfangled ideas. You're going to run our defense the way we want it, and I'm going to teach you, and that's that. So I think that's an important thing to understand. We talked about what was going to be the key in this game. It was likely going to be how do they play it. And I said, well, how's Alabama going to play it? Are they going to line up and run it and limit the possessions? I thought that was the play, and it would be the play. I thought that was the right play, and that's what they did, and they dominated this game. In fact, I have to keep reminding myself, and you said it to me a couple of times, that Ole Miss had 21 points. Didn't feel like they had 21 points. That was add-on points. It felt like a 42-17 to 42-14, 42-10 type of game. It felt like it was a domination. Ole Miss couldn't do anything on 4th down. Alabama, every time Alabama had a couple of 4th downs, it was like 4th and short, and there was like no chance Ole Miss was going to hold up at the line of scrimmage. They were getting second-level blocks on Ole Miss. Easy peasy converting. So it was a dominant performance offensively. That is playing complementary ball. They controlled the football, and on defense, they did a much better job with sound gap control. They really were lined up. They played their gap. They did it fundamentally sound, and it was clear that Lane Kiffin said there's only one way we can win, and that's with our offense. But there again, so he was going to go for it in 4th down because he felt like, and how do you think, we talk about coaches and their attitude. Let's get into that because I know the whole, the tossing of the headset is what people talk about. You know what was interesting to me? How about the comment, well, we're going to go for it because if we don't make it, we punt. We're just delaying the inevitable because they're going to score anyway. That really tells you, A, Lane Kiffin's about his offense and how it looks and I'm going to win because of me and because of our offense. And it goes to the get your popcorn ready talk and all that. It's about the offense. So the one thing you're going to get with Lane, like Leach, is it's tough to have good defenses. Now, they're doing a better job at Mississippi State. At Ole Miss, it's going to hard to be good on defense because it's all about the offense. That's where they're going to put the playmakers, and they're going to emphasize the pace and the style that will make it very disadvantageous for the defense to ever be really good. It won't be like a couple of those teams that Hugh Freeze has where you had the Land Sharks defense. That's not going to happen at Ole Miss as long as Lane's there. Lane's about how his offense looks. Even as a head coach, Lane is a recruiter, and Lane is an offensive coach that cares about how his offense looks because he's going to get the credit if the offense looks good. And if the offense looks good and scores a bunch of points, they score 50 and give up, 55, then in his eyes, he's done his job. Well, he hasn't because he hasn't learned how to be a really good head coach yet. Now, he is nowhere near Alabama in terms of talent. And the one thing that people missed on this game more than any, but Ole Miss really gave Alabama trouble last year. Oh, did you see Florida go up against that? So people look at a result and assume that because of that, A and B equals C, and it doesn't. Look at how much improvement Alabama made. Do you think that they weren't prepared and did not prepare all summer and off season to how to defend Ole Miss offense, how to make adjustments first off of the Florida game? That's coaching. That's development. Yes, a lot of people get good talent. Alabama may get the best, but they develop players the best, and they develop their team the best. They get better and better as the year goes along, and we saw that it was a dominant performance, and it was a case of Alabama is better, but they're also better coached, and they put them in a different type of a matchup defensively that worked, that controlled the game. I think, though, the reason why they ran it is because what I said about Arkansas, Georgia. Ole Miss, they run a 3-2. They run 3 down linemen, 2 linemen. What are you going to do? Fundamental part, folks, what do I preach all the time about? Defenders in the box. 3-2, you're going to run against that all day. Short past that all day. You don't have enough guys to defend that. You're not going to. Why would you throw it in there? I mean, it's like, what makes sense to you more in basketball? You've got a wide open 10-foot shot or a wide open dunk or layup. What's the higher percentage? Okay, right. Well, why would you throw it into drop 8 when you'd run it? And not only that's going to get you more success, but also keep their offense off the field. Well, why do you think their defense was better? Yes, it was better schematically. You know what else was better, Dan? They had a lot of gaps between the time the defense left the field and came back out again. Their defense was fresher. You talked about this with LSU. I tweeted this out, and you feel free. I encourage folks to follow me during game day. I like to point these things out. You know what else happens when your defense gets aided by an offense that stays on the field for a while, Dan? Not only are you getting fresher, you got a lot more adjustment time to make. When you get off the field and you go on the sidelines, you're getting oxygen, and boom, you're 3 and out and you're back again. You're not having as much time to adjust. When you get off the field and your offense is eating clock, you're rested, you have a high energy level, and that accumulation of rest versus accumulation of snaps. Common sense, overall numbers that your defense is on the field, the more yards, the more points you're going to give up. But then also, if you have less time that you're on the field, the more time you can rest and be fresh and have the ability to adjust. And when you have good coaches that can adjust and help you, if you got time to do it, that's a winning combination. When it's the same thing, why the opposite's the case for Ole Miss. Yeah, their defense is on the field way too much. But their defense is also on the field in quicker intervals. There's no time to really adjust. And that's the difference in fundamental football. And I thought it was interesting that Nick said, that's not really how we want to win. Because now what they're doing now is they want to score a bunch of points and work the passing game. But you know what? There are times where when people are going to play it that way, run the football against a soft box, throw the football against a loaded box. It's simple, elementary, and if you've got a quarterback, you've got the weapons, take advantage of it that way.
Yeah, speaking of Twitter, you can find Chris on Twitter at Landry Football. You can find me on Twitter at Dan Matthews, ATL, 1T in Matthews. So let's wrap it up here, Chris, with a quick mailbag. As Spartan Barton with a quick question here. LSU against Kentucky, then the Tigers taking on Florida. Does LSU win 0, 1, or both of those games?
My initial thoughts would be 0 because I just think Kentucky is so good, but that game would concern me more. I think there's a decent chance LSU can win one of the two. They've got, but I would answer it as 0. Just I don't know, as you can tell. I think there's a big range there. I don't like the way LSU's playing. I think Kentucky's vulnerable because they're not scoring enough points, but I think Kentucky's a better coach team. I think they probably win it. I think Florida, for as bad as they performed and played, I would think they'd respond. So I would say 0-2 would be my best guess, but you kind of know where I think about it right now. The inconsistency of Kentucky's offense, Florida, and then, LSU, I just don't trust them, but I could see them winning a game.
I go 1-1 because I think that is so much of an emotional high to try to keep that up all week for Kentucky. I think that LSU can win this game. And then you come back home and take on Florida. It's going to be an 11 o'clock game there, so you're not going to have the Swamp being – you're not going to have Death Valley being what it needs to be. But still, I think, too, it's a wonder of where the fan base is with this team. So would you necessarily even have Death Valley being what Death Valley is supposed to be?
By the way, do you know what happened this week? This is really interesting. Speaking of Death Valley, Tiger Stadium, there's 85,000 people the start of the game.
Mm-hmm.
At halftime, LSU's leading against Auburn. When I tell you there were half the people there were 40,000 people in that stadium at the start of the third quarter. I don't know what it is. Again, you think they didn't show up, but they showed up and left. I know it was 8 o'clock. Now, just for reference, it was raining here Saturday in Baton Rouge, but it wasn't raining at 8 o'clock at night. And I live, very, 15 minutes I could be at the stadium. Not when there's traffic, but so it's right there. And so I don't know. That's real interesting. So I don't know that there is this misnomer about Tiger Stadium being a tough place to play. When the team is good, the opponent's good, it can rock. If this team's not playing well, and if they do lose to Kentucky and they start off slow against Florida, that could get ugly. And it could get it's a negative crowd advantage. So, yeah, that's real interesting. But to your point about Kentucky, look, Kentucky's turning the football over. You got a good defense. Kentucky wins the game against LSU if they don't turn it over. That's all the sloppy play for Kentucky. If that continues, you give LSU some cheap points, you're right. LSU could win that game. I could absolutely see that. So I don't know there. That's not a good answer to your question out there.
Spartan Barton wants to know, do you think Kyer Elam sitting out in the UK game is similar to Pitts sitting out the LSU game last year?
I don't know. I don't know the degree of injury of Elam this year. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if there is something there. In fact, I call it kind of a little bit of a discipline to where you wonder, but it's a fair point. If there's a sense of, well, we'll save you for another one, that certainly was the feeling that we got in the Pitt situation last year. I don't know if that was the case in this game or not, but that's what I would call under, discipline is not just a guy doing bad things or, it is a discipline of focus, a commitment. And everybody makes fun of Nick Saban when he says things like, what makes you think we're going to play all these guys against Mercer? You know, that is the focus that you just don't see at Florida right now. And that's one of the things that concerns me about reaching their higher level, because that's a game, quite frankly, they should have won.
Yeah. Woodshed King wants to know, do you think Scott Woodard can get Jimbo to LSU now?
No. Jimbo loses a couple more games, maybe A&M will say, would you like him? well, all that money we gave, well, yeah, maybe it's that. No, I don't think there's anything to that. I think the selling point, I can tell you what the selling point, and that's the reason why. Like I know, like our good friend Rock Westfall, the money.
Mm-hmm.
Jimbo Fisher didn't get that money because, you know, he's going to win a national championship. Well, I don't know that he's ever going to win it at A&M, but he got it because that's what they need to get him at Florida State, and he got a bump in money because of the very reason that the question was asked. That is absolutely who Scott Woodard would have liked, and they know that, so money to them is, look, we're going to secure what we have. I still think they're confident in Jimbo, but no, it's interesting because timing's everything in coaching searches, but no, I don't. With the current deal, no, I don't. They're not going to buy out. But as I said, maybe A&M might be saying, maybe we'd like this thing to be bought out. No, I'm just kidding. I don't think there's much of a chance of that now.
One final one. Rich Coates on Twitch asking, is there anyone in the running for the Heisman this year that you guys could see in your thoughts? I'm going to give you the question, but Chris, I'm also going to give you my answer.
Go ahead.
I think this week, Bijan Robinson, if he has a strong performance against Oklahoma and that Texas can run the table and finish the year 11-1, get to the Big 12 championship and maybe win that rematch over Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship, the season he's putting together right now and the way that he's looked and what he's meant to that Texas offense, I think there is something to be said about Bijan Robinson.
I tell you what, I think the game against Texas could be a lot better than people might have thought. And if he has a big game this week, I think he's in the mix. I'm going to tell you who I think is playing, grading out, is good or better than anybody in the country. He has no chance of winning the Heisman. That's Aiden Hutchinson of Michigan. He is an absolute beast. He is outstanding. He's been great. Want to see him finish out the rest of the year. Drake London of USC is just phenomenal. He's having a phenomenal year. It's way early. Heismans are not won in September and October. They're won in November. The games in November are the ones you remember. So, look, I think there are people like Matt Corral in the moment, in the spotlight moment, took his name out of it. There's really no way that he gets back in it. I think you can lose the Heisman early. I don't think you can win it because I've seen guys, it was a done deal. Jalen Hurts at Oklahoma had the Heisman wrapped up, doing a show in Oklahoma every week. It was done. Middle of October, done, over, it done. And then it wasn't. You don't win it in October. You win it in November. The games in November are the ones you remember, and I think you lose it this early. I don't think you win it. So with that said, we'll kind of see how things develop through the course of the year. But I think you bring up a good point. Let's see how this works out. I'll say this, if Bijan's going to have a chance, and he puts up big numbers against really soft defenses. Not that Oklahoma's, it's a really good team. I don't think it's a great defense, but big numbers and they upset him, I think you could throw him in the mix. But then if he plays poorly down the stretch, it's a problem. Like Spencer Rattler's already out. Matt Corral already out. It's funny how this works. Somebody's going to emerge, but they haven't yet. It's not November yet. That's when it happens.
And that is going to do it for this edition because, as you mentioned about seeing how things go, we'll see how things go for the next couple of days before we talk to you again right here on SEC Football and Beyond. He's Chris Landry at Landry Football on Twitter. I'm Dan Matthews at Dan Matthews ATL on Twitter. Find SEC Football and Beyond, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast needs. Until later on in the week, Chris, take it easy, and we will talk to you all soon.
It was a combination of this is how they line up as well as this is the type of game it needs to be. It's not really how we want to play. It's not how we've played all year. And it's not going to be, the style that we want to continue to play.